The rain had just stopped when Mia entered the small cafe, her palms clammy as she smoothed the thrift store dress she had pressed 3 times that morning. She carried only $5 crumpled in her wallet, praying it would be enough to cover coffee on her first ever blind date. The weight of the world seemed to rest on her shoulders, but she forced a smile, reminding herself that maybe, just maybe, tonight could change everything. She didn't know that across the room, at a polished wooden table, a man in a tailored suit watched her every move with quiet curiosity. His young daughter sat beside him, swinging her feet and giggling softly, as if she sensed something special was about to unfold. Mia sat down at the table her date had reserved, her heart fluttering with nervous excitement. He was late, very late, and she tried to ignore the glances of the waitress hovering near her table. The menu felt heavier than it should have, every price tag screaming louder than her thin wallet could handle. She clutched her phone, debating whether she should leave before embarrassing herself. At the corner table, the man with warm hazel eyes noticed the way she fidgeted, the way she straightened her back to look braver than she felt. His daughter tugged on his sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, she looks sad." Half an hour passed, and Mia's blind date still hadn't arrived. She stirred her glass of water slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat as her eyes grew glassy. She felt foolish for even coming. She had promised herself she'd never try something like this again, but loneliness had pushed her past her limits. She folded the napkin into little squares, trying to keep her dignity intact. Across the room, the single dad CEO, whose name was Ethan, couldn't look away. He saw the strength behind her fragile expression and felt an unfamiliar pull in his chest. He knew what it was like to hide pain behind a smile. The waitress returned, gently asking if Mia wanted to order. Mia hesitated, her face flushing as she handed over her precious $5 bill and ordered the cheapest cup of coffee on the menu. It wasn't much, but it would give her an excuse to stay seated a little longer in case her date arrived. Ethan watched as she pressed her lips into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. His daughter tilted her head curiously and said, "Daddy, why don't you help her?" Ethan chuckled nervously, knowing it wasn't that simple. But the more he watched, the stronger the urge grew inside him to step in. Mia finally checked her phone again, seeing a message she had feared. Her blind date had cancelled last minute. He hadn't even bothered to call. A mix of humiliation and disappointment washed over her, and she quickly dabbed at her eyes with the edge of the napkin. She told herself she shouldn't care, that she was used to things falling apart, but her heart still ached. Ethan stood and walked toward her, his daughter's tiny hand gripping his. For a moment, Mia thought he was going to leave the cafe, but instead, he stopped right by her table. His smile was gentle, disarming, and somehow exactly what she needed. "Excuse me," Ethan said softly, his voice warm but commanding. "It looks like you've been stood up. Would you mind if we joined you?" Mia blinked, stunned by his boldness, and glanced at the little girl beside him who smiled up at her with innocent kindness. For a heartbeat, she wanted to say no, to retreat into the safety of her solitude. But the kindness in his eyes made her nod, and suddenly the empty table was filled with laughter and warmth. Ethan introduced himself, and his daughter, Lily, who immediately began chatting about her favorite books. At first, Mia felt awkward, clutching her coffee cup like it was her lifeline. But the little girl's chatter was infectious, and soon she found herself laughing, a real laugh, the kind she hadn't heard from herself in months. Ethan watched her carefully, taking in the way her eyes lit up when she spoke, the way she leaned in to listen to Lily as if the girl's stories were treasures. He admired her patience, her gentleness, and something inside him stirred that he hadn't felt since before his wife passed away. He hadn't meant to notice her this much, but he couldn't stop. Mia relaxed as the minutes turned into an hour. She told them about her life, how she worked 2 jobs to pay for night classes, how she barely scraped by but refused to give up on her dream of becoming a teacher. Ethan listened closely, intrigued by her resilience and strength. Most people he met were polished, rehearsed, or trying to impress him. Mia was raw, honest, and unpretentious. She didn't know he was a CEO, didn't care about his wealth or power, and that made her voice ring with sincerity. For the first time in years, Ethan felt seen not for what he owned, but for who he was. Lily leaned against Mia, as if she had known her forever. "Daddy, can we be friends with her?" she asked innocently, and Mia's heart melted at the child's sweet words. Ethan smiled, touched by his daughter's instinct. He wanted to ask Mia for her number, to find a reason to see her again, but he also didn't want to overwhelm her. He knew enough about people to recognize that Mia had walls built from years of struggle. So instead, he let the conversation flow naturally, letting trust grow in the gentle space they had created. As the cafe grew quieter, Mia realized how much time had passed. She glanced at the clock and sighed, worried about her late shift at the diner. "I should get going," she said, her voice reluctant but steady. Ethan nodded, hiding the disappointment that flickered across his face. He wanted her to stay longer, but he respected her need to leave. Lily pouted, tugging at Mia's sleeve. "Will you come again?" she asked. Mia smiled softly and promised she would. She didn't know if she'd keep that promise, but the hope in Lily's eyes made her want to. Ethan watched as Mia gathered her things and prepared to leave. He noticed the way she tucked her worn purse close, the way she moved with quiet dignity despite her struggles. He pulled out his card, slipping it across the table with a shy smile. "In case you ever need a friend," he said simply. Mia hesitated, then accepted it, tucking it away. Something in his sincerity convinced her it wasn't pity, it was genuine care. She walked out into the night air, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the image of Mia's smile, the way her laughter had filled the empty spaces of his heart. He wasn't used to being vulnerable, but she had reminded him of what truly mattered. For years, he had buried himself in work, building empires while neglecting the parts of himself that craved connection. Mia's presence had shifted something inside him. For the first time, he wanted to slow down, to live for more than board meetings and quarterly reports. He wanted to see her again. Meanwhile, Mia lay in her small apartment, staring at the business card she had placed on her nightstand. Ethan's name looked foreign yet familiar, like a possibility she hadn't dared to imagine. She reminded herself that she was just a poor girl with $5 in her pocket, while he was clearly someone important. But then she remembered the way his eyes had softened when he looked at her, the way his daughter had hugged her as if she belonged. For the first time, she wondered if she was worthy of more than just survival. Days passed, and Mia returned to her routine, serving coffee at the diner. And studying late into the night. But Ethan didn't disappear from her thoughts. One evening, as she cleared a table, she looked up and froze. There he was, walking into the diner with Lily. He smiled sheepishly, as if caught doing something he shouldn't. "We were in the neighborhood," he said, though she knew it wasn't true. Lily ran up to hug her, and suddenly the diner felt brighter. The walls Mia had built around herself began to crack. Ethan kept coming back, never pushing too hard, always letting things unfold naturally. He asked about her studies, encouraged her dreams, and even helped her with textbooks she couldn't afford. At first, she resisted, not wanting to feel like a charity case. But Ethan's support never came with strings, it was always gentle, always respectful. Slowly, Mia realized he wasn't trying to fix her, he was standing beside her, cheering her on. That distinction mattered more than she could ever express. One evening, as they walked Lily home from the park, Ethan finally told her the truth about who he was. Mia stopped in her tracks, stunned to learn he was a CEO, a man whose world was galaxies away from hers. Her first instinct was to pull away, convinced she could never fit into his life. But Ethan took her hand, steady and sure, and told her he wasn't looking for someone who fit into his world. He wanted someone who reminded him of what life was really about. He wanted her. Mia's eyes filled with tears, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that maybe she had been wrong about herself all along. She had thought her $5 defined her worth, but Ethan saw something far greater in her, the courage, the resilience, the kindness that couldn't be bought. She squeezed his hand, finally allowing herself to believe that she was deserving of love, of happiness, of more than just survival. For the first time, she felt free. Their story didn't turn into a fairy tale overnight. There were challenges, whispers from people who didn't understand, moments of doubt that crept into Mia's heart. But every time, Ethan and Lily reminded her that love wasn't about wealth or status. It was about laughter in small cafes, long walks in the rain, and shared dreams whispered in the dark. It was about choosing each other, again and again, no matter what the world said. Together, they built something stronger than either of them had known alone. Mia still worked hard, still studied late into the night, but now she had a hand to hold and a little girl's laughter filling her days. Ethan, once buried in spreadsheets and meetings, rediscovered life through her eyes. Lily adored Mia, often telling her she was the family they had been waiting for. And in quiet moments, Mia would look at Ethan and marvel at how a simple night, a blind date gone wrong, had led her to the love she never knew she deserved. The night Mia first walked into that cafe with only $5, she thought she was entering yet another disappointment. She had no idea that across the room, a man and his daughter were waiting to change her story forever. What began as heartbreak turned into hope, and what started with $5 crumpled blossomed into a love richer than any fortune. Their story was proof that sometimes the smallest choices lead to the greatest miracles. And in the end, Mia realized she had never been poor at all. Her heart had been overflowing with wealth the world couldn't measure.